Hi, I'm Rusty Dornin from the Kaufman Fellows Academy, and of course honored to welcome back Miriam Rivera. She's the former KFA CEO, now COO of the Minerva Project, and a serial investor for many, many years. And now she's going to be talking to us about getting that all-important first meeting, probably one of the toughest things that founders face. Thanks for joining us, Miriam. You talk about, you've spoken to hundreds of founders, okay? How did most of them, get that first meeting with you?
The way that most entrepreneurs get a first meeting through their social networks or school networks, typically. And it's a lot easier here in Silicon Valley because there's a lot of overlapping networks that belong to. And there's no better way to get into a VC or an angel than through a personal referral of someone they know, and especially who knows anything about technology and the particular types of technology that you're working on.
But how do you find sometimes those common grounds for referral? I mean, how much research should you be doing before you feel confident that you can reach out?
Well, I'll say that for myself, when I'm trying to make a referral to a colleague, investor, or let's say one of my companies wants to try to meet with someone who's a potential or someone that they are trying to get in touch with for a variety of reasons, employment might be another example. What I typically do is I jump on my LinkedIn, I do a Google search, I try to understand what that person is involved in at that time of their life, career, and I try to relate what this person that I'm trying to refer to them is doing and how it might advance some of the things that I know they're working on, and also just personal things that might make it feel like they're connected to that individual in some way that would be just fun to meet them. So I really do emphasize doing research and writing a more personalized before you try to get. You don't have that many shots at this. Yeah. Once you've been rejected for a meeting, it's kind of hard to get one. So you'd like to try to make your first opportunity your best opportunity.
Right. Now I noticed that we do have some viewers, so make sure if you have questions from Miriam Rivera on getting that first meeting, you write them in so we can get them to her. Is there anyone you can actually practice your first meeting with? How can you get feedback before you're jumping into the real thing? I mean, is that a good idea to sort of practice that first meeting pitch?
It's an excellent idea. And, oh, sorry, your voice cut out, so I'm hoping I've got the full question. The excellent idea to try to run a pitch by a person who hopefully has experience investing and or listening to pitches. And there's even a term for it in the industry, which is pitching to a friendly. That means somebody who knows what they're doing, and will be pretty blunt and honest with you, but not someone who is necessarily going to try to destroy your confidence in how they give you feedback. So I recommend that very highly to people. And for my own entrepreneurs, that's one of the things that I've offered and have done pretty regularly is to either look at their decks before they pitch, to have them pitch me, to give them feedback as they go to that next round of financing.
How much, but before they come in and actually pitch to you and they're still looking for that first meeting, how much information do you really want from them or will intrigue you about the company? I mean, do you want their whole business plan? Do you want just the one pager? You know, how much material do you want from them?
Typically, just a very brief letter and hopefully that executive summary that's very well written that encompasses enough about what they're doing for me to get a sense of, is this a technology that I'm interested in? Is this a team that I think has a prospect for success? And, you know, just is it both engagingly presented and coherent? Because if they can't make the one-pager work, most likely they haven't really figured out what they're doing, which is fine. You know, there's a lot of effort involved in actually figuring out what it is that you're trying to pitch, but don't shoot blanks. Don't go after people that you really want to work with before you've had an opportunity to figure out what the best story is for your company, at least enough to get their interest. You'll probably get good feedback from good investors that'll help you improve your pitch in subsequent rounds, but you don't want to lose that opportunity by not having at least a pretty well written and coherent executive summary the first time around.
You talk about startup and pitch conferences being sometimes a good place to make some contacts. If you're not actually pitching at the conference, how can you turn those events into something that maybe will get you a first meeting?
I actually think events are an excellent way to do that because it gives you an opportunity to meet people that you otherwise wouldn't. And physical proximity is often the most important part of being able to assess whether somebody is somebody you'd like to work with and or connect with in more depth after an event. So one of the things that I recommend is a lot of the times there's a speaker that is one of your prospective investors. It's important for you to go to their sessions. That's an opportunity for you to hear about how they think, what kinds of questions they ask people. It's also an opportunity for you to just assess the chemistry with that person. And hopefully after they've done their speaking part, for you to present yourself, your card, your 30-second elevator pitch, and be able to try to set up a time at that event to meet for a drink, a cup of coffee. That's really typical at a lot of conferences and pitch events, and I think that it's a real opportunity for folks. Now, one thing I should mention here is that preparation is just as important for a conference as it is for trying to get that first meeting. When I see a conference proceedings, I'm going to go through it. I'm going to try to circle who is there that I want to be in touch with for one reason or another. And I'm going to make a priority of contacting someone that I really need to talk to. I either need to talk with them because one of my companies is in talks with them, or some other event is happening where I'd like to invite them to an event that I'm doing, etc. And this gives me hopefully a fixed opportunity within that conference to do. So in advance of going to the conference, try to get appointments. But failing that, go to the event where this person is likely to attend, go to the happy hours and meals and so forth, and know what they look like. Go to their LinkedIn, go to their Google page, so you can actually try to identify them in a crowd and be able to approach them specifically at an event.
Okay, we have a question from a viewer. How much value do you put into doing those pitch panel events where feedback is the only goal? Would you advocate those even if there was a cover charge to participate?
I know that there are some angel groups that actually charge significant amounts to be able to pitch at their events. And generally, I'm not a big supporter that you should pay large sums of money to just get feedback unless that particular group is one that is a likely investor or the kind of investor that you really need. So let's say Kairetsu Forum, I think, is one that charges for their events, and they tended to focus in the past on real estate related investments. Well, that might be your best way to actually get meetings with the right kinds of investors, in which case you should think of it as an investment. One thing I'm surprised that sometimes is entrepreneurs can be really penny wise and pound foolish in that they want to have other people make investments in them, but they're not willing to make investments in themselves. And to me, that makes no sense whatsoever. So if something is the best way for you to connect with the right audience, you pay for that event if you need to, if you can't find sponsorship for free. frankly, ask for free sponsorship. People who will often give you either a speaking role, a helper role, or something at an event if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and work. I've definitely asked for free sponsorship at an event where, you know, I can only really go for a part of the day. It's not really worth my while to pay the whole amount, or, you know, but I'm willing to offer to speak or do something else in exchange.
Now, I know this has happened to you because you've related stories about it where people have actually just followed you across campus at Stanford and, you know, said, hey, and tried to give you an elevator pitch as they're crossing campus. What do you say about those attempts to just, you know, stop somebody cold and give an elevator pitch? What do you think about that?
I can find it a little uncomfortable, and I don't know if it's just because I'm a woman, but I've literally had people try to skirt in the doorways at my office building, find other people waiting in the hallways until somebody walks in the hall. I can tell you that that did not make me want to invest in that person. I think there's a difference between being assertive and aggressive and being creepy. So I don't recommend, you know, essentially loitering and lying in wait for investors. I've literally had someone else wait between 9 and 5 p.m. in the lobby on a day that I was booked. So I consider that a little too much, and I don't recommend it. Now, assertiveness in the sense of, you know, asking a friend that knows someone to present your deck or your card or something like that, you know, that's the way that introductions have worked since time immemorial. So I think that's fair game. It definitely increases my likelihood of responding to things that are not even likely to be interesting to me, because I know that this mutual relation cares about this individual enough to make the effort on their behalf. So, you know, I've done calls or meetings with people in other countries, in other states, where, frankly, I'm very unlikely to invest. But I think I can potentially be helpful to that person, and I'd like to, you know, maintain a good relationship with the person in the middle.
Do you think, I mean, I know you, that you personally are sometimes willing to give people advice. Like you said, you know, you're not willing to, you know, to invest overseas, but you're willing to talk to people. Should founders, you know, just kind of go for it in the sense that investors may give them advice when they're not willing to invest, or should they really make sure they're targeting the right person?
In general, you should make sure you're targeting the right person. One, you know, there's only so much time in a day, and what you're trying to find is really mutually beneficial sorts of relationships. And there are times when it's appropriate to reach out for someone that is not likely to invest, and it's because you really just want advice. One thing I really dislike is for someone to say that they are looking for feedback or advice, but really they're looking for an investment when they know they don't meet my investment criteria in any sense. To me, that's duplicitous, which is not a good way to start any relationship. And two, it does feel like you've taken my time under false pretenses and have made it an uncomfortable exchange. So I don't recommend that. But I've had people, for example, sometimes there are women who've been introduced to me through a mutual friend, and they're in a geography where maybe women entrepreneurs do not get a lot of support, and they really are looking for a sounding board, a referral, a way of thinking about how do I find the support within this community to pursue their goals in entrepreneurship. And you know, those meetings have often been, I think, mutually inspiring and beneficial. So, you know, just do it with the right intention and the right motivations, and it can work. But also understand that this is a job that is, you know, most of your time is spent saying no to a lot of really wonderful people who have great ideas, and be able to make, a fraction of a percentage of an investment in the number of things that you could invest in. So please don't take it too seriously or personally when folks try to set boundaries on their time and attention, because otherwise, they would never see their families or sleep or do anything else.
Along the lines of hearing that word nobody wants to hear, which is no, let's say you have a great meeting with an investor, but for their own reasons, maybe they've already allotted the amount of money that they've invested for the year. They're just not ready to invest in your venture, but they like you. What's the best way to get them or to give you a referral, and what's the best way to ask them?
The best way to ask for a referral is to know exactly who you want to be referred to, and that I'm actually connected in some way, hopefully closely. So that's what's tricky, is a lot of the times people are asking me essentially to do the legwork of figuring out for them who they should be seeking investment from. Now, I think given the quality of information that's out there now on the firm's websites, investments that a person has made, their LinkedIn page, there is so much accessible information about investors that it's really up to the entrepreneur to do that level of research, and then to make it as easy as possible for someone to give a referral. And that means I have a relationship with that person. They've provided me with an executive summary. They've provided me with an email that shows that they've done the research on how they're connected to that person. And now it's a easy thing for me to, copy, paste, and send. And one thing I do as well, and that you should be prepared for, is that I typically ask anyone before I make an introduction if they care to receive that introduction. And I do that for a variety of reasons. I think it's a courtesy to someone to ask them if they'd like to receive an introduction, because I know people's time is limited. I also know that at particular times, anything could be happening in a person's life. Their husband could have cancer, their mother could be dying. I don't want to make an introduction at the wrong time when it's not welcome. And then two, I want to give people the opportunity to say no, because it shows that I respect their time and my relationship with them enough to be the heavy that says no to the person asking for the referral. So understand that when you ask for a referral, you're putting someone else's credibility on the line in their network, and be gracious about the process if someone does want to ask before making a referral, as opposed to connecting you immediately through an introduction. That I just think it's also giving someone's personal email information or contact away. And as far as I'm concerned, that's not my right to do. It's a privilege to be able to do that because the other person allows it.
We also have a question from a former venture deal student too, and Jason and Brad talk about the A, B, and C buckets in terms of grouping your investors. And this question is talking about, is it okay to take meetings with junior associates in the C bucket because we just want to practice pitching to a human, or will that generate an unwanted reputation?
Well, the thing is, you may not have a choice about whether you pitch to the junior associates at some firms. So, and you should understand that, yes, usually those people are going to serve much more as a gatekeeper than as an advocate. But their opinions count a lot, because for the most part, they're going to eliminate you from entering that firm at all. So I would not treat that as a practice session, because that might be your only session with that firm. So treat it with the same respect that you would a partner presentation. Be thoroughly prepared, understand who that associate is, what they're interested in, all of that kind of work you'd still have to do, because that could be the person that holds the key to letting you into their firm or locks you out. So consider it practice if you will, but I actually think it's more important than that.
You know, it's funny because Brad and Jason always talk about trying to push through those gatekeepers and get to a partner or that sort of thing when you're trying to do your pitch. Is there really, but realistically, you know, you were saying that person is often the gatekeeper. Is there any way to try to push past those lower level people to get that first meeting with somebody higher? Or is it just you're going to have to take what you can get?
Yes, I mean, the way to get around it is exactly through the personal referral network that we've been talking about. And generally, if you want to try to get a senior partner from that firm, you're going to work your way back from that person's social graph. Like you'll look at their Facebook or their LinkedIn. You know, there's public LinkedIn is usually the case. You can look at things like Muckety Muck that has their board relationships, etc. And you're going to find somebody in that person's network that you know, or that you can be referred to from someone you know, that will ultimately get you to that person. But there's no other easy way. If you just contact the firm, you're most likely going to end up in a session with an associate. But they do have the ability to say no. They don't have the ability to say yes, but they could definitely say no. So, and you know, I don't want to sound like too pushy, because a lot of the associates have been people that saw the opportunity in a startup way before their partners saw it, and are the ones that develop their reputation by finding those kinds of investments for their firm. So if you really are the next thing since sliced bread, it shouldn't be that hard to convince an associate that it's going to be good to jump on your boat and make that introduction to their partners. So if they're not doing that, it's a product of both your pitch, the market story that you have behind your product, or some other issue that's probably another legitimate issue as well.
Let's go back to referrals. Let's say you through a referral, you get a meeting, but you really don't know how that meeting went. Is it okay to call the person who referred you and say, how do you think I did? Did you hear anything? Or is that kind of a no-no?
Actually, I think it is. In certain cases, it's important if you really can't get feedback directly from an investor. And you know, I think the reality is that we'd all love to be very responsive with feedback, and that oftentimes it's just a volume game and problem in terms of the number of entrepreneurs to the number of investors out there, and the number of opportunities that you have to see. You know, if you've kind of eliminated something from your consideration set, do you invest more time by spending more time giving written or personal feedback in a call, or do you move on to another opportunity? That's really the trade-off that people are making every day. And you know, my sense is that oftentimes, as much as people say they want feedback, they don't actually want it. I can't tell you, you know, from my early days, I would try to give people the feedback that they asked for, and even so, they either, you know, took offense at it, didn't take no well, and essentially wanted to reopen the conversation, again taking more time than I actually wanted to spend, and you know, it wasn't necessarily the most effective. So I will give people feedback, but generally it may take some persistence to get that. But if a person demonstrates that they really do, I definitely make the effort.
You know, talking about referrals really being so critical often in getting that first meeting, what are the big no-nos around referrals that you should not, when should you not ask for a referral, in other words?
Yeah, I think this is important to, a lot of it depends on the circumstances and the how and the what. So for example, you want to access somebody's professional relationships when you're asking for a referral. The way that you do that is so important in terms of showing both respect for the referrer and the person who's being referred, to whom you're being referred. So if you ask for a referral, be timely in your response when the person actually makes the introduction. I have definitely had people ask for a referral, and then I've made the connection, and then weeks have elapsed, and the person's like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't get back about this referral. It's a bad time right now." It's like, okay, then don't ask for a referral. I had a bad time because I just put something out there to one of my people in my network, and you didn't actually take advantage of it. That doesn't look good. The other thing is, it's nice to have follow-up. I know we're all busy, but since you asked someone to help you, if they actually did help you, it'd be nice to say, thank you, and here's what happened. I was able to meet with so-and-so, and I appreciate that you made that referral. And then eventually, when sometimes people will say, please feel free to kind of keep in touch or keep me updated on what your company's doing. I don't say that to everybody. So if I said it to you, you should actually, maybe from time to time, not overwhelming amounts of email, but just from time to time, feel free to let me know what's going on with your company. Because sometimes, it may not have been the right time to invest at a particular point in time, but later it is. And I've definitely made investments a year after the fact in companies that I didn't think were ready the first time around.
And we're getting down to the last few minutes with Miriam Rivera, so we would encourage you to ask any questions that you have while we've still got her. Talking about that follow-up, I know you're good about, of course, returning emails and things like that when you meet with people, but not everybody is. So you have your first
either. Before I started this kind of work, there are times when I'm literally getting a couple of hundred emails in a day. Most of which I have to say no to, and I have to decide, am I going to do that, or am I going to see my children and have dinner with them? So unfortunately, I think email has become such a problem for most people. I understand that the open rate on emails is something like between 20 and 30%, and that the bulk of all emails sent in the world are spam or junk emails. So please be forgiving of others that are non-responsive, because trying to dig out from all of that spam and just the volume of unsolicited mail is very difficult for investors. Think about it this way: if you were really getting 200 pieces of mail every day at your house that you didn't ask for, how much time and effort do you think you would be to respond to every one of those emails or pieces of mail? I think most of us know we'd be throwing it in the recycler without actually responding.
Right. We do have a question from a viewer. When someone does refer you to an investor and makes the introduction, it is always up to the entrepreneur to reach out to the investor after the first introduction? That's a question, actually. I didn't phrase it that way, but...
Meaning, if you asked for an introduction, is it up to you to follow through?
And you introduce them, and then is it always up to the entrepreneur to make that first?
It's a smart thing to do. You don't have to, but certainly you could wait a long time if you don't indicate how enthusiastic you are to try to meet that person. So yes, I recommend that you be the first to respond. As soon as a referral is made, if it's done electronically like most of them are, you'd say, thank you, Miriam, for making the introduction. I'm moving you to BCC to spare your inbox, and then, now say, so-and-so, it's really great to meet you. I look forward to talking with you about my company. I'd like to set up a time to meet, that sort of thing, but very briefly and quickly.
Last question, unless we get another one from somebody watching. Is there a difference in the way that you would approach angels as opposed to approaching VCs for a first meeting?
Only if you already know the angels, I guess. So in the sense that, you might know an angel from your daughter's Girl Scout troops, or your sports activities of one of your children. in which case it's much better to go and talk at the soccer game than it is to try to write a formal letter to them and contact them that way. So if you have social overlaps, try to build in opportunities to run into that person, because those few minutes that you run into a live person can often be the difference between getting a time for coffee or a meeting or not. So yes, in that way it's a little bit more informal, because maybe you already have that person in your network, you're just not close to them.
We do have one more question. Given how many emails you don't open and the desire not to appear pushy, how long would you wait for a follow-up if there is no response to your email referral, or should you call?
I have to say that the phone seems to have died as an instrument of business. I have a phone on my desk, and literally, weeks can go by without a message on it. So I don't know if that's because it's so, it's entrepreneurs aren't using the phone at all anymore, or if it's just that nobody really answers their phone if they don't know who's calling. So, I think it's okay to send an email typically within a week after you've sent a prior email, but if you're not getting any response, either it's because you don't have a referral, or you don't have, if you've tried 2 to 3 times, I bet you that's plenty to know that you're probably unlikely to get a response. I know some people in the VC industry who say if an entrepreneur can't get a referral, they're not an entrepreneur that I want to actually respond to. That's the way they think about it, because that's what you're going to have to do with your customers to get them.
Yeah, I think, out of this discussion and everything, of really realizing you can find at least 6 degrees of separation somehow if you really exhaust your research to find some connection somewhere for a referral. Is that what you've...
I'm amazed. At a certain age, you can know almost anyone by 6 degrees of separation, right? Like the President of the United States. I don't know him from Adam as a person, but do I know people who know the President of the United States? I do. It's like one of those things. I will probably never be able to use that fact just because he's surrounded by bodyguards, but it's definitely the case that it gets to that point where you do know almost anyone if you really work at it.
Okay. All right, well, we've gone over the time a little bit. Any last minute sort of things for people to remember about getting that first meeting?
One, really do not take the rejection personally. There's things to learn about your business, the market that you're pursuing. You should take the comments and advice from the perspective of how can what that person said help me to build my business, or help me to build my presentation skills to be more effective with the next person. There really are jerks in this field. I have to say, I like working with entrepreneurs more than I like working with investors often, but the reality is that a lot of them have significant experience in turning investments into successful companies, and the things that they have to say can be valuable if they're viewed in that light, as opposed to taking personal offense. These companies are like babies to entrepreneurs, so it's like saying your baby's ugly. It's a really painful experience to do pitching, but there's a lot to be learned from it as well. Maybe you are really barking up the wrong tree. Maybe your market analysis does need work. And I think some amount of humility in the process, and some amount of fortitude in terms of knowing when not to take somebody personally who's just being offensive is important, because everybody has bad days. Some people have more social skills than others. And it's not uncommon that people who are very smart often miss out on some of those interpersonal skills. So do not, necessarily think that your idea is doomed to failure, your company is doomed to failure. Because in my mind, it's not just ideas that make companies. It's really that execution side. It's the team. It's the people that you're able and willing to get around the table to work with you on it, and that can overcome a lot of ideas that sound good, are actually hard to implement as you try to build a business, and often get better just by sheer hard work.
Miriam, thank you so much. We have a couple, you can't see the questions or the comments, but a couple of folks that are thanking you for a great session and all that. It's always news you can use when we talk to you. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you will again sometime soon. But anyway, thank you, Miriam.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.